All right.
Let's go.
Okay, Vershut, the Rabbi Willig, Vershut, Rabbi Bleich, the Chavre. It's good to see the judge, the Chavre, the Mumchen, and the Chavre. We're going to discuss Hakkarah, הבעל ואשתו, discussing the concept today that's so popular and common. We live in the age of two-step authentication. You could be in your own house with your own computer, your own internet, and you need to double authenticate to be able to get onto your email or something with your phone and your watch and your computer. I was just for the purpose of this year, asked a question to ChatGPT. Otherwise, I don't waste my time with it. How do you know you exist? You as a bot, how do you exist? So if it was more witty, it may ask me, so how do you know you exist? Okay, but if it would have answered like Rabbi Bleich, I would have pulled out Ray, good. The Torah is my thought process. The Torah tells me I exist, my conscious. But what it really responded was, that's a human question. The way people think is because of heuristics, epistemology, the way that we convince ourselves because there are biases, like we're overconfident bias or first impression bias. That's how we think, and it's completely fake. It's not based on reality, not based on statistics or math or information. It's just based on the way that we feel. We feel we exist. We think we exist. We think we have freedom. We think we make up stereotypes based on schema, the way we walk down the street. If I know someone is dangerous or I can walk safely down the street, it's based on perception. But says the AI bot, I have the real information. But if you read between the lines, its real answer is, I don't exist. I'm just a compilation of other information. But it does such a good job at faking the world that's as though it's a person, as though it's presenting itself in pictures and videos and erudite information, as though it robs people of their own brains to be able to think. It continues the conversation as though it was a person. Sometimes in halacha, I think the Torah, halacha recognizes not our flaw, what the AI might call a bias, a heuristic, the way that we can see the world in its flaws and in the fallacies, our shortcomings. Yes.
The fact that I exist doesn't mean I'm human.
The fact that you're able to think, and the fact that you have the self-identity and conception is something computers can't have.
If your computer can't think it's human, if it wants.
You have a conception. This taps not into your. Maybe I'm speaking a different.
Talking a different language.
Maybe I'm speaking a different language. I'm speaking more in the area of light philosophy, not in law, not in concrete information, not in psychology as well. I'll maybe try to make myself clear. What I mean is, halacha recognizes, let's say, chazaka. You have a perception, a self-identification that the Torah allows you to trust. If you see ish ve'ishto, that they look like they're ba'al ve'ishto living in a town for 30 days, halacha accepts that. We're so clean al chazakos, if they've been there for 30 days, just like as though I can trust that my father's my father based on chazaka, and I know that I exist based on chazaka, and the Torah recognizes that. So, too, it applies, that is not just a survival method, but it's a Torah deemed, the divine present Hashem gave to us, that we see the world the way it is, and we're allowed to, and we're supposed to, act based on the way we presume things are. AI perhaps will never do that, and they could file however they decide. But I'm asking the question, what is the proper human approach and the halachic approach? I don't know if that's in different words that are clear. All right, moving on.
The problem with halacha isn't to prove I exist.
It's not
the problem is to prove that the Baal and the
Yes. So so let's prove that they exist. That they're not a figment of my imagination. I want to be able to try to prove that they're there. I'll start with the Mishnah in Bava Basar Kof Samach Zayin. It tells us, Kosin get li'ish al v'she'enish do'imo. You can write a get for the man even though the woman's not there. And then the same thing with a monetary document, a receipt, a shover, even that she got the ksuba. Al v'she'en ba'alima, even though the husband's not there to say that I paid it. But here comes the three words that are really important. The kicker, bolvad, shehe, makirim. As long as you recognize them. You can't just write these documents without any repercussions, without any responsibility, because they could fall into the wrong hands and be used improperly. Who is supposed to be makir then? The Mishnah doesn't qualify. They should be recognized. You could have said it's the same person as the
subject to the sentence kotvin. Who is the person who writes? Perhaps the sofer. But that's definitely not the pshat. We're going to come back to the sofer, and it may be very, very important. But simply speaking, the people that give the real authority to the get is the Edom. It's not the sofer. The sofer may be important for lishma, might be acting as the baal's agent, but the most important part is really the Edom. We'll talk about the baal soon enough. Says the Gemara, what is this concept that we have to recognize, the husband and the wife? We have to recognize the man's name. What did Rav add? Like the Mishnah said you have to recognize him. What did Rav think that he was actually adding? The Gemara says, well, a different problem. You mean only the man's name, not the woman's name? They ask, wait a second. You only know the man, not the woman. Now finally here, why do I have to recognize them? So what? Why don't I just take them at their word? They came in every area halacha, I have to second guess that the person in front of me is not the person in front of me? Why does that matter over here? Says the Gemara, the reason is because we're concerned, maybe the guy's going to come and say, my name is Yitzchak, and my wife, he's going to make up the name Sarah. That's not his name of his wife. He's going to make up the name. And then he's going to give the get to Sarah, who needs a get. And she's an aguna, he's trying to get her to get in co-op to be able to steal some money. So this lady Sarah wants to get this fake get from her husband. It's not really a get from her husband. Be able to collect her ksuba, and then she's going to get a lot of money. She's not really divorced. She doesn't deserve any money, but she's going to walk into Beit Din with a ksuba, with a get to be able to collect her ksuba. So the Gemara says because of this problem, it's obviously insufficient just to know the husband's name. Therefore, we need same thing with the shover. Says the Gemara. Therefore, obviously, Abai says Hachi Amar Rav. Rav for sure means necessarily know the man and the woman. Shemi ish begat huadin l'shemi ish. You have to know the man and the woman. Now, why did Rav then just say the man? If he meant both, and Abai had to correct him to say, yeah, of course he means both, then why didn't Rav just say he meant you need to know who both of them are? As well as, again, what's he adding in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says you have to recognize them. What did Rav say that was different than the Mishnah? Okay. Those are the questions that the Gemara then deals with. Yosef ben Shimon, maybe they're two people with the same names. That's a topic almost for entirely different. It starts in the Simon, but continues in Hilchos Gittin, very gigantic limud. So I'm not even going to focus on that part as well, at all. The question is, what was Rav adding? Before we try to tap in further to what exactly we're trying to test, what we're trying to authenticate, let's talk about what was Rav doing. So the Rishonim, what's on the first page, they tackle this in their own way and slightly different questions, but between these two questions, they uncover a little bit behind the Gemara. The Ramban says, since we know that you need the man and the woman, why did Rav just say the man? Why did it confuse us? So he says the Ramban, you might have thought, maybe this whole authentication process is a little bit cumbersome. It's unnecessary. What are we worried about anyway? The people that are coming in front of you, like they're causing this whole scheme. He's not lying about his own name. Probably you can trust him. Why would he lie? A guy wouldn't be so audacious to come and say such goal. Oh, this is my name. Then it's not his name. And guess what? Why would I not be so audacious to do that? Because probably the word will get out that I wrote a get, and they're going to say, wait a second, that's not your name. Other people recognize me. So I'll be caught in my scheme. Kamash Malon. Rav says, that's not good enough. Shame HaEzer. The mission just says, B'dal Shem Hakir. You need to recognize them. Maybe that just means facial recognition, or just that they're a human being. How do you know that you have to recognize this guy's name? The name is actually Yitzchak? That's Rav's Chiddush. Okay, that's the first step. We need to know their names. I wouldn't say for sure it means in addition to facial recognition, but that's perhaps someone could read the Ramban as saying that. But for certain we need, it's not just sufficient to take people at their words. We don't just trust everybody. Next, the Rashba takes it slightly differently, quoting the Ravid. And he adds another layer. Why would I have thought to trust them? The Ramban started this conversation. Maybe we should trust them because people aren't so audacious. And there's almost a chazaka that allows me to presume what I see is what I get, that when people are saying that their name is such, I could trust them. How do you know when I walk down the street and someone says their name, or I say hello to somebody that their name is such, and they're not fooling me? The answer is that's a chazaka. The people are not chatzif kulei hai. People are not so audacious. And that's, okay, a fair thing. Now, Kamash 1 doesn't work over here. Yeah, say it one more time.
The
the Ron takes it for granted that Rav means the man and the woman, even the Hav may not. You're saying an extra chiddush that the man.
Yeah, why do we?
By himself, so he just felt to say the extra chiddush.
Right. Right. So I think he's saying you might have said I don't need to hear the man's name. If the man's in front of us, the woman's maybe is not here. So I'm sure, of course, I need to authenticate. The woman's not in front of me. I have to figure out what am I talking about. But for the man who is in front of me, do I need to know his name? The answer is yes. Come on, Shalom, you have to. I wouldn't thought. Yes. Thank you for that. Is exactly what the Ramban is saying. Okay. The Rashba is not asking the identical question, and he's asking the question of what did Rav add? It says in the Mishnah you need to recognize them. Thank you, Rav. That's what it says. Territory of the Ravid. You need people to recognize the man. If that people recognize him, but don't recognize his name. It's good enough to not have zero facial recognition as long as you know his name. Some people are not so good. Some people are much better at recognizing their face, not recognizing their name. The Rebbe says there are other people in the world. They recognize their name. They don't recognize their face. Okay, how do you associate with them? I don't know. That's not what he says. So what does he say?
He says levad. You need to know both the face and the name.
Lo akar. Thank you. Yes. Lo akar panim levad. Good. Of course you need facial recognition. What I said was incorrect before. It's incorrect. Thank you. I meant that. I just didn't say it properly. What the Ravid says is, you might have said facial recognition is all you need. Forget the names. You just need to know this is the right person. This guy's married to him, and I recognize him from shul. No. Says the Ravid, the Rav is trying to add, you need him to recognize the name. Okay. That's what it says. It doesn't say in the Mishnah, Shema Ish. That's what Rav says. You have to be makir. What does it mean? You have to be makir. Shema Ish. Good. The man's name specifically, the name. The Rid adds something that the Rambam and the Torah all add. It sounds like he's saying that is the Chiddush of Rav. The Rid mentions Perish lo tema dav kashen. Maybe you'll say this only when the woman's not here. Then all of a sudden the flags are raised, or yellow flags are raised, or we question maybe something's fishy is going on that the woman's not around and the man's trying to pull a fast one. But when the man's there, maybe there's nothing to worry about. Elo says the Rid learning Rav's trying to teach us ishto. I don't know how it's so clear in Rav, but it sounds like he's saying that's part of Perush what Rav said. He didn't say that on the Mishnah. And he puts that as part of what the Gemara is explaining in Rav. So it could be because he made a statement altogether and it was unnecessary, so that's how the Rid knew it. I'm not 100% sure how the Rid saw it in the words, but Shem Ish means we need to know the man's name even though he's in front of us, and we need to know the woman's name even though the woman's even if the woman would be here, we need to know the man and the woman's name. Okay, that's whether it's clear how he got it from the words, I'm not certain, but I'll say for sure that is the din the way the Rid's learning. Okay, we have 3 chidushim, yes. Yeah, the halacha, according to the Rid, do I need to recognize them when they're both in front of me? Most of the time, a lot of the time, we have gittin today, the husband and wife both come in. If that's what happens, do I need to recognize them? The Mishnah didn't say so. The Mishnah just said, Kosin Gatli Ish, we could write for the man without the woman, but if you recognize them. What if they're both there? So the Mishnah didn't say. The Piskei Rid learns that's what Rav is trying to add.
Why is that?
No, he's not answering that question. I don't know why he mentioned the man over the woman. He's already at the end of the Gemara, the Hakkarah of the Gemara. Yeah, meaning I need to recognize the man as well as the woman. His point is that Rav did say something. What does it? What does it mean I have to recognize him? So Rav is trying to explain the Gemara, explain the Mishnah to add another layer. Begat means I always have to recognize the man in the name of the get when the woman's there, whether or not the woman's there. Now, it may only be understood because of the Hakkarah of the Gemara. The Gemara says, what, just the man without the woman? So the Gemara says, you're right, it means the man and the woman. Now that we know Rav said the man and the woman, so now we can understand, Rav meant to add, even when the woman's in front of you, yes, just like the man's in front of you, you have to recognize him, also you have to recognize the woman and her name, even when she's standing in front of me. Lufi the Maskana of the Gemara. Who did the man? Who?
Whatever I need for the man.
Whatever I need for the man, I need for the woman, yes. Yeah. I'm not saying this Rid is an outlier shita. It's what we're going to find in all the poskim. He just says it as part of the Pirush, and it seems perhaps, as he's saying, that emerges from what Rav said. Okay, it's not just, let's say, a svara the Rambam had. It could be it's a Pirush in the Gemara as well. Just a simple reading. You can take it or leave it in terms of whether that's the simple reading in the Rid or not. Okay, next big question that's looming is, what is really the underlying mechanism behind when we have to authenticate people? Is that deraisa, derabbanan, that the requirement that we need to identify people to check out that they're not an AI bot? Is this concept that I need to check out this is really Yitzchak and this is really Sarah, whatever? That concept I need to authenticate them, is that deraisa, derabbanan? Is this obligation from the Torah or not? So the poskim all discuss this in lots of different ways, and they're going to focus on one major theory. And I'll start, let's say, with Torah Gittin, and then I'm going to focus on another. I'm going to present perhaps a different suggestion. Torah Gittin says, for sure it's derabbanan. He pulls out Tosas and Yavamas when it's talking about what by chalitza. Do you need to have the husband and wife do you need to recognize them in order to do the chalitza? So the Gemara by HaEzer does say Vishnu Odinu. You do need to recognize that's part of the seder of chalitza. What happens if you can't? Could you still do a chalitza? The Gemara there has two opinions. One says yes, you don't have to actually recognize them. And Tosas says, wait a second, but the Tosefta says you do have to recognize them. So how could that be? So Tosas, I put it somewhere on the sheet. Tosas says, quotes Rebenu Yehuda, one of the Baalei. Tosas says, midaraisa. Tears to Tosefta midaraisa on a Torah level. Amarai dahachari diraban. On a diraban level, that's what we're arguing about. The Tosefta's point was you do not need to recognize them. You could do choltin al b'shein makirin. If you need to, you could do chalitza without actually recognizing them.
It's page 2.
Two. Yeah, my sheets, I just add my own comments, so the page number's not going to be the same. I'm already on page 3. Yes. So that's Tosas. Good. Now, why would it be that it's only derabbanan? Why would it be just the way derabbanan? The Torah Gittin suggests, and a few words, but this comes out in many poskim. This is the one that's the mainstay reason, is milta avida leguluye. This is perhaps hinted in the Ramban that we saw on the first page. It's explicit, I think, in the Ritva, and we'll see many Rishonim and Achronim who use these words, which is that midaraisa, you could assume someone's telling the truth if it will be verified by itself automatically. Over the time, people in the town will hear, oh, these people got divorced, and this is what the get was, and this, oh, their names are Yitzchak and Sarah. Wait a second, that's not what their names are. It'll be self-evident very quickly. People don't lie about things that people will find out about.
Oh, but I don't mean to be funny about this, because I heard Shekel said that today we wonder, is that really true? Because people have been caught red fact fighters, they still persist.
Yeah, he says the Cuba Missile Crisis, whoever was in charge of Cuba, he said, oh, we don't have any missiles, and then it was shown that the big pictures that the missiles were aimed at America. But people aren't afraid of lying anymore. I'm talking about the days of the Gemara, and I'm hoping in Batei Din today we could still, under a certain level of seriousness that people bring into the court, they still don't lie under certain circumstances. I'm not certain about that, but I'm hoping that's the case.
Okay.
It's no longer Mills.
Oh, okay. That's another very critical point. Is a lot of times the gittin we have are from totally different places. Well, it's better and worse. It's much worse because sometimes you'll have two people travel, and travel's so easy today that it's not like in the old days. To start traveling to a different town in Poland took weeks or took a lot of money to go on a wagon. So it was very unlikely to bother traveling. If you traveled often, it was with people you knew, or relatives or friends or whatever it would be. To be able to have a place to stay. That was common. Today, it's very easy. Two people get on a plane, go to California, and they make up a story. Oh, yes, we're married and you want to get a divorce. And really, it's because this lady he's really attracted to, he wants to marry her. So he's getting divorced from her. He's not really getting divorced from her. He's getting divorced from his old wife. And his old wife doesn't want to take the get from him. So he makes up this whole get scenario to pretend that he wrote a get. And he pretends her name is Sarah just for the day. And that was really his wife's real name, Sarah. And he does a quick get on the spot because he paid the rabbi and they did a good get. And an hour later, they're all finished. So then it's not milta avida legulei, just because what are they going to do with the get? They're going to rip up the get, and he's not necessarily going to go tell everybody else, oh yes, I got a get from my wife, and she may never hear about this. So in one sense, because travel is easy, milta avida legulei is worse. Is not necessarily the case today. On the other hand, perhaps it's better that word travels by social media. People spread things. Now they don't take pictures of the get. We don't spread the exact get, but we do have a document that Batei Din signs after the get saying we have a heter. The document that the Batei Din signs that we officially permitted through a get that we wrote, Ploni and Ploni. They write their names, and we'll talk about a lot of other additions that we do. It may not be so simple.
You don't have to travel. There's some people who are not identified as members of the community.
Mm-hmm.
They're married and they want to get divorced. So they go to somebody and they get a divorce. They don't tell anybody about it.
That could have happened 2,000 years ago too.
Not likely.
They're saying a town of 10 people wouldn't have happened.
People who were known as part of the community. Where else would you be? They
Okay.
are very anonymous. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
And there are enough people out. It's happens the whole year of the year.
Maybe.
They're divorced. They haven't been divorced. They want to get married. They get it. They don't tell anybody.
Good. It's because we live in a very fluid society. People move, and there are gigantic communities, and not always under anybody's radar. Nobody knows everybody. You correctly, I accepted the point that Milta Vidal Gluye is not so simple today. That's point number one. The chazaka that lo chasef inish, a person would never lie in Batei Din, that's what the Ramban did say, and that's also another svara might be on a deraisa level. We don't need to authenticate any further. What? It only works for him, correct? I mean, if she's there and she also says her name, it would be just as effective, but correct. Yes, okay. A totally different theory why midaraisa might be efficient. It might be. Okay, so I want to get to mumar at some point, but a chazaka fundamentally works with mumar, but not so simply because it could be the person. All the parameters have changed. The chazaka, he's Jewish, so like for kashrus or whatever, you hold kuftei zayin. If he's not chashid, you'll accept. No, but I understand. The question is, once we're tampering with the question, then maybe the person might lie under certain circumstances. So the person's not religious in the first place. Maybe he would lie. It is possible. Rav Moshe by mumar by edus. Right. Yes. Okay. So I'm a kabel that is a very the chazaka would break down by mumar according to that. Correct. That's very, very, very significant. One other thing I might save the day, may be wrong though because I don't really see in the sources, but it's an interesting theory nonetheless I think to raise. I talked about this when we did Kohanim. A person says Kohen Ani. The Mishnah in Ksubas and the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, HaEzer, all the way in the beginnings of Vav Zayin. He's Neman Midaraisa. Okay. Now I would have just said, oh, Shavi and Ashachati Isur, a guy can make a neder, the Ksos, Lamed Al Dal, the Gra there, and HaEzer in the beginning writes it's because an Adam and Eman Al Yoter Ish. Which pasuk it is worth working?
Is Kohen really the same thing as the?
No, it's not all the same.
Because the consequence would be Kohen's make deal.
That's correct. I mean l'chumra and l'kula. I mean, I'm not on a derabanan level. I mean, derabanan, the Rambam says you don't trust he as a Kohen. The Ramach says yes. I'm not discussing every detail. I'm saying on a fundamental level, the Gura tells me a powerful concept, which is I have trust about myself about self-identity, min Torah, that I could represent myself in front of other people on a Torah level. And that if a person comes and says Yisrael Ani, now the Rishonim usually assume that's because of a rov. The rov people, the Tosas and get into, but fundamentally you could have raised this question as well over there. That person perhaps has ne'emonis about himself, ben l'kula, ben l'chumra, about who he is, midaraisa. That's why by chalitza the Rif by hacholetz writes ishtamodino means only one aid because midaraisa you only need two aidim. Nemuki Yosef because milta vida legluye. But you could have just as well said this possibility. The other place, though, where the Rif inserts his opinion is in beginning of Bava Basra, where we say you need to recognize that someone's a ani. If someone says, give me tzedakah and I'm a poor person, we say, show me your documents or prove that you're a poor person. So there the Rif says he has to prove it, Rabbeinu Hanan, with two edim. Why isn't he trusted about himself? So a very basic idea is you could be trusted very much about yourself. You in your own world could do what you like, but you don't have the ability to start causing other people to. The effect they'll have on other people, the ramifications they have on other people, that's like eidos, davar mamon. If you want to extract money from somebody, you have to have two eidim, like the rest of the Torah. It's certainly about yourself, you're not going to be trusted. That's just one theory that a person could be ne'eman about himself. It's a big topic, definitely not at all so simple. I don't think it's borne out in the Makoros, and nobody, as far as I saw, brings it up by an Isha, but it would only make a sense, at most my theory would only work on a Deraisa. It certainly won't work on a Derabanan.
It's never going to be in a vacuum. I mean, that's why it can't be relevant here. There's always a wife.
No, so, okay. A person is Neman, like I mentioned then, or whatever, Shlomo Miller, about a guy who says he's a Kohen, and Shavi and Ashi could have effect for himself, and could affect someone who trusts him. Like his wife, Kimli Begava. That's like Eidus Deraisa. Or like in the Ksubas, I say this aid. There's a machlokas, whatever. Shnaim v'shnaim, two Eidim who come and say that the woman's husband died, not the husband died or didn't die. And one of the Eidim says, "I'm one of the Eidim, and I know that for a fact what I'm saying is right. So I believe what I'm saying is correct. I'm allowed to marry them. So even though it has ramifications, I'm allowed to marry this woman." And she says, "Yeah, I trust this aid." So now that's not mutter and basin; it's usher and basin. But we won't have to. If that is not a marriage, we'll say Teitze on B'di'ev. That the Gemara in Ksubas, you have such a concept. Like a person could say, I know this to be fact. Kimli begava, and it could even have a ramification for someone else if they trust you. That's my basis of this. Similar to the entire concept of Kimli begava. The Perek of Dal and Hilchos Sanhedrin in the Rambam, or Kimli be whatever Basar Chizda v'chule v'chule. How's it going to help with
second bow? She has been amongst herself.
This would only help on a deraisa level if people trusted this. If they trust him, then fine. A person has an emunah about himself, midaraisa. That's what my first statement is. Second statement, the fact they'll have ramification on anybody else is only because kimli begava.
Do you trust this guy remarrying him?
Yeah, for like Rav Moshe by Kashrus, what I was referencing before, Moshe by Kashrus, that the ikr, the Taz by Te'ima, the ikr in all of Vedas, we're not talking about davar mamon, davar mamon, we're talking about davar she'erva. We're talking then, the ikr is just trust. Now, that's at most going to get me deraisa, but it's not going to help against the chazaka. If there's a chazaka, these two people were married before, and now we're trying to remove a chazaka just based on kimli begava, certainly business will never matter. Then I don't even know if midaraisa that works at all. Okay, but absence of a chazaka, a person when there's two edim on both sides and no chazaka on something like that, then we could discuss a sveika deraisa. Then we could talk about kimli begava working. This is not necessarily practical very much to help every baal sheni. This is a theory, but maybe I'm running into problems because it's a questionable theory. Moving on. What do the Rishonim and Achronim do? What do they say about Dorais Rabbanim? So we said the Torah Gittin. He holds it's a milta v'idei l'gluyei. He asks from a Ramah later on, tensing on him later in Hilchos Gittin, where it says that if the shliach makar, you need to bring two edim that this is his wife to be able to deliver the get. So he asks, what's the difference? The get Pashut asks, why here we say in our siman, for Hakkarah Baal, we only need one witness. Like the Rif says by Chalitza, one witness is good enough, because the Milta V'idei L'Gluyei, the Muki Yosef, the Ritva. But why then do we need two edim for delivering a get? So the Torah Gittin says, what Rabbi Bleich raised before, it's not everything in the world is always Milta V'idei L'Gluyei. Not everything is going to be found out everywhere. Sometimes when you're traveling, when you're in the same place, if I live in this town, I'm getting divorced in this town with my wife, and we all lived here, and there's a chazak over here, that's Milta V'idei L'Gluyei. How likely is I'm going to try to lie about the 9 names when in front of the Beit Din? That's Milta V'idei L'Gluyei Gomer. That's why midaraisa is good, and you only need one eid. And therefore it's mahani. But mamun, hakara, pikarov, even a relative is good enough, a woman is good enough. But hakara shizos ishta, we're delivering the get to where she lives somewhere else, and who said this is this guy's wife? I don't know, it's being delivered somewhere else. Far distance, a long distance get. There, loving Milta V'idei L'Gluyei, and there you need two edim. Now, as Lech mentioned, that might be particularly practical, according to the Torah's Gittin. I don't know if you can then say, oh, all of our authentication, all our Hakkarahs today are all derabanan, and we can rely on women, we can rely on all sorts of derabanan umdanas. It's much more questionable. As far as I know, the poskim don't follow that through as being so much more machmir, but we'll get to what we do in practice, and we'll discuss it at the end. Marshdam has a fun tshuva in Salonika, sad case. There was a guy who is Shlomo Kabasan, whatever, who was disappeared on a ship. He was on a ship that was capsizing, and he jumped overboard, and he was captured by pirates. The wife, or we don't know exactly what happened to him. His wife and kids in Salonika haven't seen him in 4 years. There was one witness, one Jewish. There's no witnesses that he died. We have no idea what happened to him, to Shlomo, other than there was one elder 4 years later comes and says, I heard from the non-Jewish scribe of the ship that he saw 3 dead people on shore, and one of them was this Shlomo Kabbason. Oh, so then maybe it was good enough Eidos. It's Eid Echad, and it's Eid Mipi Eid, and it's from a goy, but by it. So the Beit Din thought about this, and they were going to consider perhaps being mad to her to remarry. That was good enough evidence to remarry. In theoretical, that should have been good enough. But they didn't decide completely on the matter, and they said, well, we're going to keep looking into the researching it. A year and a half later, she did remarry, and then 2 years later, another Jew comes up and says, I was in a different place in Italy, and I saw the man in chains, and he was crying out to be redeemed from his captors, and he identified himself as Shlomo Kabbason, this guy. And he said, I have a wife and kids who are left in Salonika. Please redeem me. And whatever, this other aide, I don't know, didn't have the money, whatever, didn't redeem him, but he came and said to the Beit Din in Salonika, you know, this guy is claiming he's alive. So now we have Eid Echad. So the Beit Din And the Beit Din wanted to say, forget the second aid. The first aid says she's allowed to marry, leave sleeping dogs, leave it behind, leave the way it is. And that edus, some Rabbi Ben Lev, I'm not sure it's the Mari Ben Lev, or okay, he writes that that other edus doesn't count because that was not. We never identified this guy as Shlomo Kapson. We have no idea who he is. There's no Edom who recognize him anymore. This guy is randomly. He just who is this guy is identifying himself as Shlomo Kapson from Thessalonica, but maybe it's not him. Maybe he just made up that his name is because everybody knew this guy was lost. Who knows? So some posek want to say that is reason to dismiss that edus. The Marshdam. The first aid is talking about someone who actually recognized that this elderly Jew who met the scribe from the ship, the scribe, third hand already, but there was somebody there who says, the non-Jew believes he recognizes this guy's face. Hakkarah, facial recognition, could go very far. And this in the second aid in this story with the Thessalonica guy, he's not saying, I recognize him. I just saw this guy and changed. He identified himself. Maybe that's not Hakkarah in the Torah. My first, he said, I'm going to go work with... Yeah. Oh, very good. Okay. I think my theory thing goes much further than Milta Vida L'Gluya. The poskim don't work with what I said at all. I'm not saying I find that, but I'll say the Marshdam, not because of Milta Vida L'Gluya, says this is Edus Midaraisa. He says, you didn't recognize the guy's face or his name. We don't know exactly who he is, but he claimed that about himself. Midaraisa, that's considered Edus. And she therefore has to get divorced. He goes through a whole big sugyo, a gigantic tshuva on that. Now, why does he say it? Oh, sorry. His reason is Milta Vida L'Gluya. Sorry. On the fundamental uncovering level, why do we trust this guy about his name? Because eventually, probably, this guy will be redeemed by some other, hopefully nice Jews who will redeem him. And finally, they'll find out what his actual name is. And they'll be spreading the information. He'll hopefully come back to his wife and kids in Thessalonica. And the information will be spread and people will find out. So the guy would never lie, midaraisa. We assume a person would never lie about his name, something that he's going to be caught red-handed. Now, he may have some reason, because the people in Thessalonica might be nice people and wealthy and be able to help redeem him, but
Who said he ever came from Thessalonica?
we have no idea. No, he said he came from Thessalonica. We have no idea.
He's a chakran, he's not going to
He could be a liar that he's a captive and he's trying to get out.
He won't come back to Thessalonica.
He may not come back to Thessalonica, but the Marshdam wrote that it's called Milta Vida L'Gluya. The information may spread. They didn't have Twitter, but who knows? The people who redeem him might send a mail to Thessalonica or a witness or whatever. So that he considers to be Milta Vida L'Gluya. Nobody would lie. We assume that the captive guy wouldn't lie about his name and place. Midaraisa. You trust him at his word, and that's considered Edus Midaraisa, even though there's zero recognition other than his word.
And that he has reason to lie, that he's captive.
But he could have said his real name and said, I'm a Jew and please redeem me.
Unless
This guy's been, people have been looking.
he wants someone's ransom, and it's a long time from Thessalonica.
Okay. No, yes, this other person, but the person who gave Edus didn't recognize him. It's not that, he's a buddy with him and he recognized him from before. He was someone who came to Thessalonica. And this person said, I'm from Thessalonica, my name is such and such. He says, I'll tell the people in Thessalonica. So he did tell the people in Thessalonica. But at the end of this tshuva, the guy was still not redeemed. So I don't know. It could be that the tshuva is not really dealing with the pidyon shvuyim. But I think his opinion would for sure in our sugya stand that most of the time authentication of the husband would be midaraisa, unnecessary. Midaraisa, we trust him at his word. Midarabanan, we have to go through the hoops and we have to try, and once the stakes are lowered to only Darabanan, it makes it a lot easier. Who else agrees with this? The Ksos. Ksos says the biggest proof that it works midaraisa is because B'shad T'chak, when Shad Sakana rather, in time of danger, when the Romans are trying to kill us and persecute us in Israel, and we have no chance to sit down and authenticate everybody with a proper basin and witness it, or they're going to kill us, we write our names on a get, and we want to get rid of the evidence quickly. Shad Sakana, Kotun Alpha Pichin Makir, we could write a get without recognizing anybody. Says the Ksot, obviously this is a Darabanan. When it's tough, so then we throw out the Darabanan, the low Gazr B'chaygan, and the rabbis weren't going to make a decree. But they would have made a decree when it's not Sakana, but it can't be Daraisa. If it would be Daraisa, how can you make it when it's Darabanan? How can you make it when it's Shad Sakana? Are there any Cholkim on this? This is a very formidable opinion we mentioned so far that holds Midaraisa, this works. I heard that Ray Willick spoke about this whenever it was the Chavur, the last time was Gittin. I didn't find it online, so I couldn't listen, but I'll have to hear further. There's the Semach Tzedek Lubavitch who disagrees with the Torah Gittin. He assumes midaraisa. You do, as is the Chazon Ish, is a much bigger name for our purpose for now. Midaraisa, you need to authenticate the husband. We don't assume it's Mildavid Gluya, so on a deraisa level. What about the Tosfos? He says, well, the Tosfos means something interesting. The Tosfos means that on a Torah level, they're arguing, and it means the way we arbitrate, the way we decide how we paskin is that we accept the Tosefta on a deraisa level. Midirabanan, we paskin like this opinion, you need Hakkarah. But not that their argument was not on a Torah level. On a Torah level, we absolutely need to have authentication. In our psak, we paskin that like that opinion midirabanan. Okay, he disagrees with it one detail. Chazon Ish has it much more boisterous, much more clearly, much more directly. He says, how can you possibly have eidos about something you don't recognize? What type of eidos is that? What type of testimony is that? I don't recognize the guy or his name, but I believed him. He told me this. And then they got divorced, and then we let them remarry. Well, how'd you trust them? How did the dayanim, how did they aid him, how did they trust him? Well, because probably he wasn't lying. Says the Chazon Ish. That's not what eidos the Torah is referring to. Eidos is something you saw. Ora o yada. You have to. The pasuk says you have to know something. How could you possibly know something just because he told you it? He's biased about himself. So that's why you can't trust him. So he has a main question. He knows the ksos. He knows the midaraisa work because Shasakana works. So what does he say? Says the Chazon Ish, under pressure, when people are thrown in a pit and are going to die, and they say, "Oh, write a get for my wife because I'm about to die." Under those circumstances, we don't assume people lie. Under desperate circumstances, when the Romans are coming to persecute us and kill us, that type of situation, we hope people are not going to lie and make a joke out of our system at that time. But they're going to try to get a few extra pennies to mat. The guy in the depth of the pit is not going to try to matter an aguna just in a faulty way, just to be able to get her to remarry, just because, and he's in the middle of dying. Like, that doesn't make so much sense. Probably he's not going to mess up or try to make a whole co-op with a woman to be able to get her to get money from a ksuba. If the guy's dying, he's probably not going to be lying. That's the Chazon Ish. It's not called eidos at all. It's not a beer.
Where do you get the need to get their eidos?
Well, I think his starting point is, well, why don't you need eidos? I mean, how do you know that the guy is who he said? How do you know they're married?
Where do you see in the Mishnah need eidos?
It doesn't say in the Mishnah. He's just saying everything in the Torah you need. How can you believe them? Maybe they're lying, and maybe they're not even married. Maybe this guy's not who he says he is. He's saying, okay, I'll say it like this. We have Machlokes Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer. Do you have 80 Masira, 80 Chasima? So you have to have 80 when you're ready to get. And without it, Kiddushin Samachai. You need Edim for Kiddushin and Gittin. If you don't have it, it's not even Kiddushin, it's not Chal Midaraisa, the Kiddushin, or a get, without Edim at all. Not on the Masira or Chatima, it's nothing. Says the Chazon Ish, where's the Edim? There's zero Edim on my get if they don't recognize. And like, I think he would say, let's say, I've been an Edim just because I know how to sign, whatever. And in Rabbi Jactor's Basin, I've never met the almost every single one. I've never recognized them any time in my life before then. And okay, we'll talk about how we actually do it. But like Chazon Ish would ask me, how then are you an aid? How are you a witness to this? You don't know what you're testifying about. You just, you're relaying someone the information someone else tells you. So we'll try to get to the answers. But he's coming from. Of course, you need aids. I have to learn.
You're being made, or you being made that Sarah is Sarah and is being divorced from.
I think I am. I believe that.
Sarah says she's Sarah, and Sfu says
but
it's not made on the get.
Yeah.
But the Chazon Ish said that's not called aids. That's his say so.
You're not Hakkarah.
Right.
No. So exactly, I'm not going to be the aid Hakkarah, but I'm the aid on the get. So how did that information get to me?
The get isn't that this person is that person. It gets that this person.
But the get it should be batil. It shouldn't be meaningless if I don't know of what I'm testifying to. Someone else told me this name is. Fine, so if I have 80 Hakkarah, that works. We're going to get to how we do 80 Hakkarah. But if I don't have 80 Hakkarah, and I'm just saying, I want to on a Torah level. Before the Mishnah told me the Din Derabanan. Says the Chazon Ish, what type of aid would that be?
But your Haggadah is nothing.
That's what the Chazon Ish is saying. Midaraisa, my Haggadah is meaningless.
That's why we need 80 Hakkarah.
Just if I witness something, but I don't know who I'm witnessing, is meaningless. That's what he's saying. It's not Haggadah. So now let's take it over to Kiddushin, marriage. If they have such a thick veil that you can't see, this is not new. This I do remember doing in the Pischei Tshuva, Simon Lavan Aleph, Katan Dalid, in HaEzer. The witnesses don't know to whom they're testifying. Are they married? The two witnesses see there's some figure, maybe it's a man, maybe it's an alien, but presumably it's a woman, accepting a woman's voice, okay, accepting a ring on her finger from a guy, says Harei Mekudeshesli. We recognize the man, the Eidim, but the Eidi Kedushin recognize the woman. Okay, nowadays, yes, we usually have veils that we can see through, especially in our circles. But let's say they didn't. So,
I know something. We had a married woman doing Yom Kippur, and she went in and she covered her hair also because it was Yom Kippur, but she's married already.
right.
I told her, really, I don't know who she is. I can't see her face. So I had her turn around so we can make sure it's working like that.
The Marit quotes his father, the Mabit, who says they're not married. They're not married if they didn't see the face. Because I don't call that God a sadist. Reminiscent something we just have in the Chazon Ish. It's true. There's some body over here that's getting married, but they don't have facial recognition, so it can't possibly be sadist. Avnei Malone Luxos disagrees strongly. He says, "What does it make a difference? You know the person's name and address. What's the difference? It is a human being, and they're getting married. It wouldn't be chal if it would be a man. Obviously, it's a woman. We're talking about a woman getting married to a man, and well, if it would be two men, it would be meaningless in the Torah. So obviously, we're talking about it was men and a woman. So a man and a woman. So says the Avnei Malone. The Yeshiva says in his own words, the Koheles Yaakov quoted in the Pesachei Tshuva, if you would have this woman who would do adultery 5 seconds later, right? Here's the ring, you want to marry me? And she says, I do. And then 5 minutes later, instead of walking to the yichud room with her husband, she goes out with the best man, with the husband's friend, into a different yichud room, and she does adultery in front of those same two Eidim who saw it. And they didn't see a face recognition before she had a very thick veil, and now she takes off her veil. Now they see a face. Okay, is she chayev skila? Says the Mabit, presumably no, there was no kedushin, there was first marriage, was nothing. And says the Nesivos, what are you talking about? This same woman, I don't know what her name is, and I didn't even recognize her face, but it's the same body, for sure it's the same person that now is doing ish. So obviously there was kedushin, obviously this is wrong. That's exos in the Nesivos. But I believe a little bit, al derech the Mabit is what the Chazon Ish was presenting. Is you have a Kasei Edus, just relying on information that you hear from someone is not called a testimony of anything. It wears the Edim. As opposed to the Ksos is, you can rely on information that makes you believe what you're seeing is what you see is what you get. It makes sense. Like Shiva made a day. I'm allowed to testify as a neighbor. This guy's been living in his house for 3 years. Even though, have I seen him every single second? The answer is no. And it's impossible, but that's called Yediyah. It's called knowledge because with a lot of circumstantial evidence, we testify is not American eidos is not the same thing. Eidos in American court is not necessarily the same standards as a Beit. Beit may be higher in this. The way people
pre-harvest season, I saw
yes. Well, no. The harvest is yes, but then what if he wasn't there at night? So the Gemara there, and I made the macha at night. That's what the Gemara says. Shiva mediyadi. We assume you can make an eidos. We sometimes speak. I know he was living there for 3 years. Well, what about that night? Or in the Gemara Makos Daf Zayin, I saw that two people were sleeping together. They were near that they were kimenaf and that they were doing adultery. But I see Kamichol Shoferet. Did I see the Aver? And the answer is no. But I can still give edus according to the Rabbanan, to Rabbi Akiva, Midar Raisa, and say what I see is what I get. What appeared like is true. Now, if the Edom, if they'll give me Drishah Hakkarah and I'll get it wrong and I won't know the details, then we'll throw out my edus. But until that point, we trust me based on my assumptions of the way the world works. So I saw this woman and she was under a veil. Okay, but she is a woman and she was getting married. Yeah, I don't need facial recognition. That's just a comparison analogy to what I think most poskim Ladina hold, not like the Chazon Ish, by a gittin that authentication midaraisa is you don't need to authenticate the man and the woman midaraisa. Yes.
You're also present in the decade, so you see the column before the decade.
Just did the wedding on Sunday. This, 4 days ago, and that was pretty big. So, before they put the ring, I said, just pick it up myself, just take a peek.
They didn't see.
They saw. And the next question is, they saw. They never saw the woman before in their lives. They wouldn't recognize her in a lineup. It's the same problem.
Yes, but that at least makes it a little better that they. Because the standard by Kiddushin is only Eidei Kiyum. They never need to sign anything. They never need to give Eidos in a Eidei Haggadah and Beis Din. So all they need to know is that they are halachic Eidim. They don't need Haggadah. The Chazon Ish is talking about Gittin. We need Haggadah. We need to sign something.
Tomorrow they'll know who she is. It's what they saw today.
Some people might forget after 5 seconds.
So they forgot, but then they forget everything.
But they were married.
How do you know it's the same way you saw yesterday? Blah blah. But when you see it, if you recognize it,
okay. So we're going to try to streamline some of these pieces. So we're going to talk about how do we do Hakkarah today. in Beit Din in Israel, they may be afforded the luxury and between time and money and ability to raise the bar and say we're going to require that you bring, like it says in Shulchan Aruch. Let's read Siv Gimel. The Edom were going to sign the get. Makirim v'yodim. They have to recognize and know. We know the man and the woman. We know they're married. That's what it sounds like. Here, the Ramah says the sofer should also have to know. And Hakkarah zu. It could happen from a woman, it could happen from a relative, but the Tivin Shogat says that's what they do in Israel, Chel Gimel, Parag Gimel, as Arichos, on how they do it, but they get the relatives or they get the friends, the people who know the Chazakah. This husband and wife have been living in their house for 30 days at least, or for 10 years, or whatever it may be, and they come and they tell the Beis Din, and they tell the Edom, and Shalom Yisrael. That's ideal. That's what should happen. And it's exactly what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Hakkarah even al pi echad, but we do Hakkarah.
There's much higher stakes there.
The stakes are higher. Why?
They can't get married unless they do the get in Israel. So if they want, Chiloni or somebody who really wants to get married again is very inclined to cheat. So they have to raise the bar. You're in America, you just go do whatever you want. Who cares?
So.
We're not enforcing anything.
Okay, but unfortunately, so over here we're relying on a shmo from Rav Moshe, and we're going to get to the details as soon as I can, where the standards are I would think, much lower. We're not always requiring two aid or 1 aid who recognize. The ideal would be yes. That's the most ideal is the Mizar Kedushin does the homework, and sometimes it is possible. Not just on the phone, but he meets with the rabbi of this couple, or the rabbi of the couple comes, who recognizes them from before. That would be the most ideal thing. People who are makir, who yodea, they know this is the wife and this is the husband, this is their names. That's the best. But sometimes that doesn't happen. It's just not possible. They're not so religious, they're conservative. There's no rabbi of them, or there's no relative that's willing to talk to the Beis Din, or the Beis Din has been pressured because she's an agun, she's been... The Masadr, the get. A Masadr get, I mean. I didn't mean Masadr Kedushin. The Masadr get, I meant. I meant the Masadr get. I said Masadr Kedushin, I misspoke. But let me say again. Masadr get should ideally get in touch with the relatives, should get in touch with the rabbi, should get in touch to be able to recognize them.
Get in touch with anybody. He should bring people who are makir.
Yeah, that should be upon the husband and wife. But Lamaisa, I've never seen, in the time when they give the get, they don't bring them. I've been to many getting. No, not never. I've seen once or twice. I've seen them bring, sometimes they bring a mother, they bring a sister, sometimes they bring a rabbi. But they're not always happen. Many times that nobody happens.
If you don't have it, then you'll work further. But ask for it.
I'm not a Masadr Gittin. I think the Masadr Gittin are working under a lot of pressure that they have to move things along, and often these are like, I don't know, close to Aguna cases, and they don't. The more requirements you have upon, especially not religious people, that have to bring in your relative, bring in your people who recognize you, and say, sorry, Rabbi, or it's just not going to happen. To work out a time that works for the Edom and the Rabbi and
they'll go to somebody to ask for shot.
Maybe they should. I'm saying what I have seen.
Well, the problem with the non-religious couple getting divorced, that even to bring somebody who knows them, he's also not religious. She's also not religious.
Right. That's another one issue brings in that. Okay. So one issue that I think is worth clarifying is what's the concern Chazal were worried about to begin with?
The rabbi is supposed to liaise.
Yeah. So these are the questions I've had. So sometimes what I've seen very often is you ask them for their driver license, and you can write it down, whatever number, whatever it is. Or you could ask them for their marriage license. So I would have thought, I know Rav Moshe, I know the Shmuel, but before that, I would have asked innocently. That doesn't tell me very much about Hakkarah. That doesn't identify that. Someone could have gone to a secular court and changed their identity, changed their name legally, and gotten a different driver's license. And even if it is this is the secular name. Why does that correspond to the Hebrew name? The real name, Din Torah name? How do you know that the marriage license has anything to do with any Kedushin? Maybe it's a marriage without a get, maybe it's from a previous... as well as, how do you know Zeh they're married because of the marriage license? It doesn't tell me they did Kedushin. It doesn't tell me they did a Kedas or Kedin, that they did it with the Kasher Edom and the Kedushin. The fact that she took on the last name of the husband, which if that happens, that's at least a step up, and some Masadr Gittin do consider that as somewhat evidence of them being married, but she could have taken it on. She could change her last name for any reason. It's not particularly legal. It's not illegal.
As long as you don't commit fraud.
No, not so. So therefore, I would have thought just seeing a picture on a license, driver's license, shouldn't necessarily be very much Hakkarah. But I have another reason for questioning it. The Pesach Tshuva has long discussions on this. One who is bringing the ksuba.
You have two problems here. You need Hakkarah for the Baal and the Isha. It's one Hakkarah.
Yeah, and then also Hakkarah on the Ishta. Yeah.
Hakkarah that they're married. Right?
Yes.
So a license could help to be makir the Baal and the Isha, and you still don't know they're married.
Well, yes and no. Does it really? But maybe not. Maybe they forged their license, marriage license. No, not marriage license. They forged the driver's license. They went to the secular court and changed their name, or they have a secular name, but their name is Thomas, but they're actually Avram. And how do I know this is the halachic name in Dorais? What?
You have to pull out a chazaka like chatzifinish in the zayik is like driver's license.
Yes, probably. Okay, we can talk about that. Chazakas.
All the children are chatzif to do to get alcohol.
So I'm not so worried about lo chasif inish midaraisa. I'm worried on the derabbanan level.
Students this week showed me their fake IDs that they all have.
The website where you get free license.
The birthdays are pretty much, they can't wait.
But
today.
So.
What would be your gold standard?
With gold standards, what they do in Israel is get witnesses who live in their community who recognize that they were husband and wife. That's the gold standard I would look for. That's in Batei Din's highest level standard. In America, I don't think we're doing that always. Sometimes we are. Not always.
They have the documentation of the wedding.
Yes, they have a lot more accessible.
Right? They have all the documentation, you just have to match it up.
We don't always have all that accessible to us, especially with conservative reform. Okay, so someone told me, what are we worried about already with the license, for example, that they're going to go to secular court to change their name, to go through the trouble of that just to get the woman off the hook? Like, that's a little bit ridiculous. But I had some source that maybe sounds like this. What?
For alcohol.
For alcohol, they may make a fake ID. The Ben Ish Chai, so I think that, I'll make the following point. The Ben Ish Chai said, someone once brought a get from Paras, from Iran, that they had the woman's name, Rachel bar Avram, and the aid was Avram. So the person asking said, does that mean the father of the girl signed the aid, signed the thing? So the Ben Ish Chai says, what do you mean? You don't have to be big Talmid Chachamim to know a father of a girl cannot divorce his daughter and cannot be the aid on the get either. So no matter which Batei Din has come from, it has to be that it must be that they must have done it right. You don't just assume this get is possible just because they happen to have the same name. It's unlikely that happens. Probably it's kosher. And then it makes a statement. What are we worried about? Someone on purpose made a mistake? In the divorce sof. On purpose, the father pretended to divorce his daughter so she can get her out of a marriage. Come on, says the Ben Ish Chai. What are we worried about already? We're not worried about people bemazed fooling the system. So I saw this in the Sefer in our discussion, but I just want to clarify my understanding. That's not at all what our Gemara, Rishonim, or Achronim are talking about. The Ben Ish Chai is talking about when you have a get that's signed by kosher people. Did they do the wrong thing? Did they not? We don't have to assume. A get comes in front of you. It happens to have funny looking names. Maybe it's kosher, maybe it's not. We assume it. Batei Din did a good job. It's a get, it's a get. A document comes from Batei Din, we assume it's fine. What we're talking about here is people sometimes do try to cheat the system. Maybe deraisa, lo chasef finish kuli ha. Yes, me deraisa I have a chazakas, me deraisa I have a legula. But me derabanan, I still have a requirement to verify. So the Ben Ish Chai is not relevant to our sugya at all. The Ben Ish Chai is not saying we're not worried about scammers. We're not worried about scammers when we're talking about came from a Batei Din, signed by a Batei Din. We're saying that wasn't signed by a Batei Din or signed by kosher edim. Then maybe we are worried. That's what I brought all the Rishonim who talk about. Yes, we are worried about Kanunyo. The Beis Shmuel, the Taz, they all say it based on the Rambam and others. Yeah, we worried about people trying to fake the system. Okay, what?
I'm just talking about rolling $350 in a fake license.
Yeah, fake license so easy.
Well, the false document.
So for $300, you get a fake license, a fake driver's license. Okay, so that makes the Masadra Gittin's job a little bit harder. Okay, to then try to verify it with the government or state. Okay. Bottom line, do you need to recognize their face or just their names? The Beis Yosef sounds like it was already page 6. Just quickly now, he says, yes, it seems like you need both the name plus the recognition of their face. The Pri Chadash, the Beis Shmuel, they say, no, it's sufficient with their names. And the Beis Yosef also meant that. Who has to recognize? The Sofer have to recognize. The Rashbam, the Rambam, the Tur all say the Sofer does have to recognize it because otherwise what was I? They waited. The Beit says, of course, the sofer doesn't need to recognize. He's not verifying anything. He has a quill in his hand and he's writing. What's the difference? He's not doing anything, verifying anybody. So he doesn't need to be makir. However, the Ramah says yes, for lishma it's necessary. He's a very, very integral part of this. He's incredibly important. He has to know who's going on. The poskim also is basically a chumrah. They don't think we do try to have the sofer. Now the poskim ask like Tivol Shagetz is like, I understand. If anyway, what we do nowadays is the Edim just are paid to walk in and to sign their name because they know what they're signing, but so is the sofer. He's paid just to come in to sit there. Okay, maybe being paid makes you puzzle. I'm not talking about being paid. They walk in, and they're signing what they heard from the Masader get. So why can't the Masader get just as well tell the Edim, also tell the sofer? Why is there so much ink spilled over? Does the sofer need to know? Everybody's there being verified. Everybody's being authenticated in this room at the same time by whoever told them so, that everything is correct. So one suggestion that was from the Yad, Kovitz al Yad, that says maybe it's necessary to get verification before the day of the get. Make sure everything's under control. If you do it right on the spot, maybe it's wrong. The Rivash says so. He quotes the Beit Yosef. We don't say if it's on the spot because word might not get out in time. Maybe the guy's going to run away to a different country. So it should be everything verified. Like we have sometimes when it's not at the time of punishment in the Beit Din, we're trying to verify something, Eid Echad works, the Rambam says, but if you're trying to figure out, we're giving Malchus, and then the Eid walks in, one Eid doesn't do anything. If you want to get authentication in advance, it's much better. Perhaps that's why they were talking about it. Other poskim did not hold like that. No, it doesn't matter. The Masader Gittin could do it. He could tell him right on the spot. He said Sarachin, he saw some Masader Gittin are very makbid to try to tell the sofer in advance, but okay, not at the day of. Moving on. B'diavad, if you don't do Hakkarah, does it really matter? So the Bach says, yeah, it's okay, it's fine. After the fact, and I've heard this said, maybe in the Beit Din, Rebbe Jack or other, look, at the end of the day, Kotin, B'shad, Sakana, Alpha B'Shem Hakir, and at the end of the day, we're stuck, we'll just do it because we're under pressure. The Bach definitely says B'diavad it works. But does everybody agree? The answer is a lot of poskim do not agree. They say even B'diavad is possible. And what does it mean, Shad Sakana? It doesn't mean Shad Chak B'diavad works. It means when it's under a certain case of danger, Lo Gazr Chachamim. But in other cases, even B'diavad, they made a Gezerah. If we don't follow the Gezerah, then it's Midira Banan. It's a problem that she's not fully divorced because we're not sure that we did a good job of authenticating and verifying. The Chalka, both say you can authenticate after the fact. Okay, it's a funny sort of idea, but you figure out their identification after the get was given. Poskim do accept that. What if there was never authentication at all? Tiferes Yaakov says it's possible, but there is a suffix in the Torah's Gittin. What did they actually mean? Maybe they just meant it doesn't really make a difference if you authenticate them before, if you authenticate after. You never forget to authenticate them at all.
So the get is good L'mafreya?
Well, okay, it's not at all pasha. Basically, a lot of poskim hold B'diavad. You didn't do any Hakkarah. It works, but it's not. I can't at all say that it's accepted by the majority of poskim. It is a group of poskim that say that. The Torah Gittin Bra is one side. The Bach does hold like that, but the Chazon Ish definitely holds B'diavad is puzzle, and the Torah Gittin has a side. The Mishpat Aget also says that we should tell them to do it again based on the Mari Navon as Hakkarah. That is a big machlokes Hakkarah and B'diavad. If you did it again without Hakkarah, do it again. Some say okay. L'maisa, what we hold is you do have to do Hakkarah. If you do Hakkarah after the fact, that's for sure okay. Like Shmuel and the Pri Chadash. But if you don't do Hakkarah before or after, you never did the proper Hakkarah, that's a question. Some say it's kasher b'diavad, but a lot of poskim hold that's a real problem. From the Beis Meir and the Noda B'Yehuda and the Pesach Shua here, it does not at all sound like they're so excited by this Bach. So it is a shita, but like maybe after the fact they'll rely on it not to say the kids are mamzerim or something, but because anyway it's only derabanan. But if you assume that's only derabanan, not like the Chazon Ish. Okay, using a document. So the Beis Shmuel already throws a wrench into this idea of bringing a ksuba or a marriage license in the Beis Din because maybe they forged the documents. We can only rely on documents that are produced by people, by Ne'amana, but if it was produced by the Baal or the Isha, by the woman or the husband themselves, they brought it in. Well, maybe they're lying. Maybe the whole thing is no good. So that's just like the Beis Meir said that about a ksuba. Theoretically, you could say that also about a marriage license. The Kovitz al Yad Modern Sefer, he said the Shmuah from Rav Moshe is that we rely on driver's license and marriage licenses. And he says the Beis Shmuel, and he basically leaves with Sarachin. It could be as a machlokes. It could be Rav Moshe didn't hold like this Beis Meir. We're not worried. Or he does say the Svara, Rishon Nehiga, driver's license below Tamunah, even with no picture. I've never seen driver's license with no pictures, but in the 70s.
Oh. Recently, no driver's license had a picture.
Oh, so I guess in my day I grew up with.
He got his license with a picture.
All right. When I got a license, I'm too young. All right. So Rav Moshe said the driver's license without pictures are still enough to recognize them. People don't, like the base mayor said, maybe not even forge it. Maybe I'll borrow, whatever, make it, someone else will forge it and then I'll borrow from them. And I got a ksuba from a different... Right. To match someone's aguna, I'm trying to scan...
Things you don't borrow, you don't lend out.
Right. So I would give my ksuba to somebody else because this couple is an aguna. This woman wants to get divorced. It gets divorced already, so she hands off her ksuba to somebody else. So the Rav Moshe said, as a general rule, people don't give away their driver's license even to borrow it for 5 minutes. No, I know Rav Moshe is talking about that, and maybe things have changed.
No websites I just found.
When there's no pictures, they weren't forging them either.
I thought the websites had to get.
I'm sure in Rav Moshe's day people also forged things, but maybe it wasn't as easy. But isn't it? It's not a crime to forge a government. It is a crime.
Since was a crime, just since when it be illegal, it's just
Okay, I hope people. All right, let me just finish over here. A passport is much harder to forge, perhaps.
Do you have any shuvas on using either fingerprints or?
Ooh, that would be exciting.
Why can't you just bring a picture of their wedding?
A picture that they're married. So that might. Okay, I think you could. I think you could question that too, just because you could either forge a picture or like, how are you going to know that he gave her the ring, but right after the picture was taken, right before? How do you know that was kosher? Okay.
I don't know about the kiddushin, but I know that these two people that I see in front of me were on chairs and they were.
Okay, but is that a chazaka or that's a circumstance? Okay, basically, I heard from one Masader Gad who said, like, basically asked them a lot of questions over a long time preparing for the get, and there's enough of a basic good assumption that this is the husband, this is the wife, and they were married, and not fooling us just trying to match some other aguna. To me, I understand that might be true, and maybe some poskim would say that's work. To me, in the poskim, that's like very questionable. I never saw Umdana's works. I saw Eid Echad. Yes.
There are people sitting in jail because they relied on that.
So you're questioning that as well. That's not such a good evidence.
That was
No, the criminal, the rabbi in jail or the
for the get. They were in jail for the Yisui on the get.
Okay, no, but I mean, no.
And when did they have her married the first time? It was a guy.
The prod father.
Okay, so no, so I'm not. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. Other Masader Gittin said yes. The step one is we would ideally try to get people. We talk to the people that know the couple before. You know that they're okay. In terms of, do you have to know that they're actually married? The Rambam sounds like it. The Shulchan Aruch does sound like it, but in fact, the Beis Shmuel says, what happens if you deliver a get? Does the receiving end actually know that they were married? He says, it doesn't sound like it. So the Kovetz Al Yad says, no, nobody actually thinks. Even when they're both standing in front of you, you don't actually need to know that they're married. Marriage license, it's a secular document. It doesn't tell the halachically married, and you don't actually need to. He holds, the Beis Shmuel and the Chacham both believe you don't actually need to know that they're married. You just, when he wrote Shezeh Ishto, he just meant that you need to know this is the woman standing in front of you's name. You need to know they're both their names. They're not making up their names. You need to know their names. You don't actually need to know that they were ever married. That's the Kovetz Al Yad's opinion. However, Shara Melech on the Rambam says the Rambam meant like he said it. The question about the delivery, he said, so let the delivering Beis Din deal with it. They will have to verify that they were actually married. But different posts can quote this differently. Tivin Shalgat really was, the Kovetz Al Yad was not into that you have to verify the marriage, but the Tivin Shalgat was. Different Sarim write this differently. I think the general assumption is, the Shulchan Aruch sounds like it is, you do need to verify they're married. But just to note, there really are some poskim who think you don't need to verify they're married. It doesn't say that in the Gemara Beferish. The Mumar is a big machlok. The poskim which you trust people are not religious. In terms of what we do nowadays, I said some use the umdana, the assumptions, circumstantial evidence, questioning, see if they sound like they're serious. And the Masader Gad said sometimes he found that the whole thing was just a hoax. It was just somebody just trying to fool the Beit Din. Rabbi Batsri, who I quoted, has a story like that. That some people came. He said the first day he came to the Beit Din, they told them that there was a husband and wife, and really this woman was not his wife. It was just his intended fiancée to get remarried, and he wanted to give a get to his wife. He didn't want to accept a get, and they just faked it to pretend that they're giving a get to get this guy to be able to get a second marriage, which of course is wrong. So he said from that time on he decided to be very, very careful on Hakkarah to make sure we're verifying real people and they're not fooling us. But my understanding from my Jackter and Rabbi Zilberman is we rely, HaEzer, Rav Ike, they quote Rav Elchanan, the name of the issue, that bisman, now that we rip up the get, we're less makbid. As was Rav Moshe, we're less makbid. Regans, Vaig, and Rav Moshe says nowadays we rip up the get, we're less makbid on recognizing their names. So Rav Ike Sultan was talking about, let's say I can't figure out from their secular name to their Hebrew name. The whole thing, he said, nowadays, since we rip it up, is all a question of Aris Ayin. Does it get the real name? Does it not get the real name? But I know he's referring to him anyway. So therefore, Rav Ike Sultan was more sad. Nowadays, we don't keep the get, and afterwards, we can much more make on that, as did Rav Avadia. Rav Moshe, I would say, extended or apply that even to recognize them in the first place. Even recognize them in the first place, there's more reason to be makel, and you don't have to worry that Orim, people are going to question it afterwards. Not everybody, I thought this was a chiddush, but I believe this is what in the base of America that is relied on. If there's no other options, a driver's license, a marriage license, which I asked my question before, I still think there is possible to ask questions on that type of Hakkarah. But nonetheless, I think this is my understanding, what's relying on based on Rav Moshe, and they assume that for sure it's only Derabanan. They assume it's Derabanan. If we assume it's only a Derabanan question to begin with, then it's close to what the Ramah and Poskim are describing.
Sometimes you just Google them.
Yeah.
You see their pictures when they got engaged.
How do you know Google's right? Why is that an 8 echad? Google's not an 8 echad.
Apropos to Rabbi Willick's Chabur last week, 2 or 3 days afterwards, there was an article in the New York Times about how easy it is to fake things.
Yeah, I mean, just because a picture says something, I don't know. I should trust Google.
5 days afterwards on Sunday, I wrote again.
Yes, I'd like to hear.
I think it's even good idea to.
He has a lower standard.
All the time.
I was referring to that. So I was referring to that.
Circumstantial evidence.
Well, there he's talking about something. I think that because of the law of the land by milk and the way it's cheaper to get cow milk than any other milk, he's talking about something that we could verify. As I called Rav Moshe.
You can have your face be there present and answer your name. You can't hold a conversation.
It's equivalent. It's knowledge. Yes, that's. I was referring to that before when I was presenting my original theory. I said, "Kimli begavah." That's Rav Moshe's word. So I agree with that. What you're connecting to, but none of the poskim, none of the poskim that I saw, but maybe it's. I couldn't find anybody who wrote anybody in our topic who wrote like that. The Rav Moshe that I quoted here is just from students.